Welcome on in, golf fans. It's your boy Gsluke here with our course preview for this week's Open Championship. Gonna break down all things Royal Troon Golf Club and make sure you're that prepared for all of your exposure this week. So gonna go through what to expect from the venue, some of my key stats and comp courses for the week, as well as a little hole-by-hole breakdown to give you a little taste of what these players are gonna be facing. And by the end of the video, you'll have all the information that you need to get your research process started and go out there and have yourself a week. So without further ado, gonna keep this one quick and concise for you guys. It started off with some of our course details. Royal Troon Golf Club is going to be a very difficult test in 2024, especially if we get some of that Scottish wind. This track isn't overly long at just over 7,200 yards, but back in 2016, the last time we played, only 2 players were able to get better than 7 under par, and that was despite not having the worst of weather that week. Of course, that was Stenson and Phil Mickelson going out there and having their infamous duel, but outside of those two, pretty much everyone struggled in the last time we were here, and a lot of that is because of how difficult this course is off the tee. A lot of times when we go to the Open, we hear about the creativity needed at these courses, those pot bunkers, so on and so forth, even the firm soil being the defense of the track. And at Royal Troon, it's kind of more like a PGA or US Open kind of major, because out here, there's legit rough at Royal Troon, and the off the tee gorse bushes, also some of the out of bounds that come into play on the back nine, are a much bigger factor than even those infamous pot bunkers in firm and fast link soil that we get at these Open Championships. So I think much more of an off the tee test than what we're going to get at some of these other championships, and that will be especially evident when we go hole by hole and I show you some of the shots that are required. But before we do so, let's make sure we're on the same page when it comes to some of the course specifics, which first off, we've got ourselves a par 71. So 3 par 5s on the docket, just as you would expect for a par 71 setup, and also a shorter par 71, right? Only about 7,200 yards is shorter for any sort of major championship. However, it is a sneaky 7,200 yards. So if you just looked at that alone, you'd probably agree with that sentiment. But when you look at all the short par 4s, you look at it just 120 yard par 3, there are some real lengthy holes they wouldn't expect to see at a 7,200 yard golf course. So definitely a little bit of a strange setup, and it does get progressively more difficult as you move through the round as well. The first 6 holes, you could see players 4, maybe even 5 under par through that first stretch. The second stretch is about medium difficulty, a few real tricky holes like the train track hole out there that can trick you up. And then the last 6 holes around Royal Troon are probably the most difficult finishing 6 holes in all of major championship golf. So it is going to be very entertaining. It is set up to have that excitement towards the end of the round, and I think you're going to get that here with Royal Troon. A few other things to point out is this golf course doesn't really have one designer. It's been updated. It's had holes added to it like 5-6 times since the late 1800s. So don't expect to see any sort of huge design element out there with this golf course. There's fescue grass from tip to toe. So whether it's the rough, it's that longer stuff, or the greens themselves, everything is going to be some type of fescue grass. And then outside of that, that's all we've got for this golf course. It is one that has been around forever. We kind of know what to expect from it, and not much has changed since the last time we saw it in 2016. Before we truly deep dive the key stats, comp courses for this week, I want to give you guys a taste of what this course is about, and you're really going to see how special this course is going to be. And honestly, I think it's probably the best major championship course that we're playing all year this year. So first off, hole number 1, probably one of the easier holes, and depending on wind location, could be drivable out there for some players. It's going to play about 370 yards, and playing downwind as it typically will could make this thing a little pitch and putt out there for your longest players. Even if you choose to take an iron off the tee, you're going to leave yourself at most about 100 yards in. So you can see over here to the right, this is an out of bounds area with all of that beach to the right side. And then over here to the left would be the rest of the golf course. So you're going to start by going along this water to the right, and the prevailing wind is downwind on these first 6 holes. So hole number 2 is going to be up just past what we have here with hole number 1, and so on and so forth down the coastline. The second set of holes is kind of intermediate, where it's not really playing downwind or into the wind. And then the last 6 holes, as you'd imagine, right, are coming back to the clubhouse. So that aspect, the prevailing breeze, along with the fact that those finishing holes are like 500 yards, is why it gets so difficult. And it's also why the starting holes are so easy, because they're short and they play downwind. So like I said, 4-5 under par over these first 6 holes is well within reach. Hole number 2, something I want to point out is this little house to the left, which is not like a maintenance area. This is a legitimate duplex house. So there are 2 houses in the center of this golf course. If you're one of the lucky people that is staying in that house this week, well, next time to go to the Royal Troon, hit your boy up and let me come out there and enjoy it, because you can see hole number 2 from there. 3, this is 16 to the left over here. A nice special that was put up by Golf Digest on all the history of this house, but just wanted to point that out because yes, it's out of bounds over there as well. So you've got this OB the whole way down the right, down the left here on 2. I guess it's in play if you hit an absolute shank. But once again, another easier hole, shorter hole, not as drivable, even if it's downwind, is what you have with hole number 1. But this front middle pin location is diabolical, and I'm sure we're going to see it for at least one round. Hole number 3 is 380, another short par 4. This one does have a little bit of a burned running down the middle, so you can't quite take it up there near the surface, but still a little pitch and putt hole where you could be 3 under through 3 if you have your best stuff. Hole 4 is a par 5, so if you started off 3 under par, well, you could definitely make a birdie out here at the par 5 4th. So once again, another one of these scoreable holes and does play directly downwind. Hole 5 is 209 yards, so despite being a longer par 3, at least it plays downwind and also is not as protected as some of the other green complexes around here. It's not as sloped, it's not as speedy as some of the other back 9 greens, so even though it is longer than what you have with those first 4 holes, it is still pretty scoreable. And then finally, the last little respite before you get slapped in the face the rest of the way in, and even the second third of holes, like this, 7 through 12, whatever it is still pretty hard. But 6 here is 600 yards. It is lengthened since the last time he played here. It's going to play about 630 yards this time, which is part of the reason that this is going to play over 7,200 yards in 2024. Outside of that, though, not much has changed on this golf course, and with the equipment changes, the ball going further, it's probably going to play even easier than what we saw despite that added length. Hole 7 now, so this is the second third. Some people will call the first section of this golf course Heaven. It has a nickname there as Heaven. This second section is Purgatory. So like I said, it's not like it's impossible, but definitely the difficulty gets ramped up a little bit, partially because of the angle. You saw all the first 6 holes went the same exact direction, maybe a few degrees off in either direction. Now you take a complete 90-degree turn, right? You're heading inland here for hole number 7, and though this doesn't look like a very difficult driving hole, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pot bunkers out there, and they're not great. If you get into those, they're almost a full shot penalty, just like all the pump bunkers on this property. Unless you get extremely lucky and somehow have an avenue to the green, you're likely just splashing out and then hitting your third shot to the complex. And all of the land here, what you can't really appreciate from some of the overhead views, is everything rolls into these bunkers. So though it looks like a 40 wide yard fairway, maybe even a little bit bigger than 40 yards wide, it plays like 15 to 20 yards wide because of how much slope is going towards all these bunkers. So the smart play here, guys, is to hit like a driving iron here to the corner. If you hit a driver, you hit a 3-wood, these become even more so in play. So it's a strategic hole, little dogleg from left to right, actually, in fact, very severe dogleg from left to right, and a green complex that is small and has these coffin-sized bunkers, which you can see the first few holes, they were more like the pot bunkers that we saw at the Renaissance Club. The ones that are shaped a little bit more awkwardly, like we have here to the right side, this front right one is a very typical pot bunker. These ones that are awkwardly shaped, though, and are extremely narrow are the ones where you can get tucked up next to the side, and you'll see that with hole number 8. Hole number 8 is the most famous hole at this golf course, which is the postage stamp. It is 121 yards. It is the most difficult hole, in my opinion, in high winds, partially because it can play into the breeze, which is, of course, adds some difficulty, but these bunkers are the most penal bunkers, I don't want to say in the world, but they're definitely in the conversation for the most difficult bunkers in the world. You've got that coffin bunker to the left. It's actually called the coffin because of you're pretty much dead if you hit it in there. And then to the right side, this bunker is that same kind of shape. And because it's below the green surface, it's also extremely difficult. So the difficulty with the coffin bunker is even keeping it on the green. The difficulty down here is even getting it far up enough to keep it from rolling back into that bunker. So this is a hole where you've seen guys make 15 before. You're going to see somebody make a quad, a +5, a +6 out there for this week for sure, if not something into the double digits. So I'm sure that some sort of website's going to have a live feed of the postage stamp, and it will be absolute must-watch TV the entire day. And then numbers 9, so the last hole there, the front 9, is as easy as it gets for the second 2/3. It's only like 400 yards. There aren't as many bunkers to worry about. Now, this gorse down the right, you don't want to hit into by any means, but this is probably as easy as it gets for the second 2/3. Hole 10 is 449, and while this one doesn't look that tricky, doesn't have as many bunkers as maybe the front 9 does, it plays directly into the wind. So hitting at 290 is going to be a healthy hit, especially if it's blowing 15 to 20. And this is a lot more rolling, the topography that is, than what you can tell from the overhead looks. 11 is 476. This is the railway hole. I think it's called train. I'm not 100% sure the exact name, but this is the hardest hole. Maybe in major championship golf, it's definitely the hardest hole that's not the postage stamp here, right? At postage stamp, you're going to see people make really big numbers. Jack Nicklaus, of all people, made a 10 here at this hole. You've got the out of bounds to the right. You're going to have a bunch of trains that are going to be running along that. It is a very, very busy railway over there. You've got gorse bushes to the left, which of course is just a lost ball if you hit it in there. And to the right side over here, you also have gorse bushes. And the issue with this hole is it's going to play a lot longer than what you have here on the overhead view. So they have the tee box back here. I'm pretty sure the tee box for the Open Championship is even a little bit further back here for 2024. So the gorse to the right comes in play. Of course, you see the out of bounds to the right and you're like, okay, I'll miss left, and then you hit it and have a lost ball. So it's just ridiculously difficult off the tee. It's also completely blind because you're hitting over this gorse here. You can't even see a lick of the fairway. So good luck trying to pick out a target. Hole 12 is 430 yards, does go back the other direction. So this is the last hole of the second 2/3, and kind of like what you had a few holes ago, it's as easy as what you're going to get for this section of the golf course, but it's by no means an easy golf hole. 13 starts hell, and yeah, these last 6 holes, good luck. There's one par 5. You're going to have one chance at a birdie. The other 5 holes, you'd be lucky to make par on all 5 of those. So 13 is 469, plays directly into the prevailing wind, and if it's neutral conditions, if it's not windy, this is maybe about an average hole in terms of difficulty. Plays into the wind. It's one of the more difficult out there. 14 is 178. Will play longer for the Open Championship. So another hole that is a little bit longer here in 2024. And once again, plays directly into the prevailing wind and a very awkwardly shaped green. 15 is 499, so one of the longest holes out here and plays directly into the wind, that same direction. And yeah, there's more pot bunkers here as well. So if you enjoyed those on the front 9 on the easier holes, well, yeah, during hell, you get the longer, harder holes into the wind, and they add the pot bunkers for you. 16 is 552. It is the only par 5 here, but because it plays into the wind, you've got no chance at hitting it over this berm. It requires about a 310-yard drive from the Open Championship tees, and the result of that is a long second shot in, oftentimes 240, 250 yards out there to the front edge. And while it is only 552 yards, it plays like a 600-yard par 5 because of the layup. 17 is 220, playing directly into the breeze again. Good luck. This is the hardest green out here, the fastest, the firmest and fastest, and one of the more difficult holes as a result. Definitely in the top 5 when it comes to difficulty. And then 18 actually isn't as hard as some of the other holes on this final stretch, but it is still 460, has pot bunkers on both sides, which adds much more difficulty when it comes to the off the tee play, and once again plays into that breeze. These bunkers to the left and right are some of the hardest on property. So yeah, you can make a birdie here because it's only about 460, 470 if it's playing in neutral conditions, but you add in that prevailing wind and it is an absolute brute. All right, and now that we've seen the golf course, let's go through some of my key stats that I'm using to identify some of my top plays. So if I'm going out there and trying to find stats to look at, off the tee is probably the most important thing this week. I think if you're going to finish in that top 10, top 20, you have to have a strong off the tee game. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to be a bomber. It does mean that you have to have a solid game in either direction. I think being a bomber, taking some pot bunkers out of play, is going to be helpful this week, but being accurate, keeping yourself out of the gorse, those pot bunkers, is probably even more important than that. So over here on Bet the Number, we've got their model loaded in over here to give you guys an idea of what their experts are looking at this week. And the main thing that caught my eye was this distance from the center of fairway, right? Distance from the edge of fairway is actually the stat that they're using here. Distance from center of fairway would give you a pretty good idea as well as what you're looking at here. But what this does is it gives us a measure of who hits the ball the straightest off the tee. And because of all the trouble that's in play around this golf course, I think that is going to be a huge factor. But what you love to find are guys that are both long and straight. And there's no better player at that than Scottie Scheffler. So I think that a lot of people mentioned Pinehurst being a really good fit for Scottie Scheffler, I think that this is an even better fit than what we had that week. And in fact, out there for my outright card, I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to do, but I'm highly considering, in fact, there's well over a 50% chance that I'm just going to bet Scottie Scheffler this week and bet a whole lot of money on him to go out there and win. I think that this is about as perfect a setup as we get for him because he's got that driving accuracy that we're hoping for. He's a very creative around the green player that excels when he's hitting off of short grass. Of course, Open Championships, that's what you get. And I think other Open Championship venues where you can kind of spray it off the tee, so a St. Andrews kind of fit that. I mean, even like a Royal Liverpool isn't going to be as difficult as it is here off the tee. I think this is one of the few Open Championships where he's actually going to get an advantage for being both one of the longest and maybe the straightest player that we have in all the PGA Tour. The other guy showing up, Tom Kim, has been really good at opens, right? T2 last year and a very straight and relatively long driver. So I think that's going to suit him relatively well this week. Colin Morikawa has done everything but win lately. I mean, T4, his worst finishes were T13, T14, and a couple top 5 finishes at signature events at the Charles Schwab and the Memorial Championship. So you're talking about a guy who hits it long and straight and has won an Open Championship before. So these kind of drivers that I think at PGA Championships, US Opens would be in play are even more so in play for this Open Championship than we'd normally look at. A lot of times for Opens, we're considering around the green, right? We're looking for guys that are very creative, kind of like when we bet Cam Smith to win the Open, and we're able to hit that one. Guys like Terrell Hatton, right? He's played pretty well at Open Championships, right? T6, T11 there a few years ago. Also played well at this course back in 2016. It's worth noting. I think he had a top 5 finish the last time he played at Royal Troon. A lot of times we're looking at these around the green stats. Hell, even putting for Open Championships. I mean, we've seen that correlate to success over the years. This is more of a ball striking test. You hit it in the gorse bushes, you hit it out of bounds, and you're screwed. I mean, you're not going to get to the 17, 20 under par that guys like Phil and Stenson were getting to unless you go out there and you keep it in play. So for me, this is maybe the most important stat this week, but being long and straight is, in my opinion, the only way to go out there and run away from this field. To do something like Stenson and Phil did, you're going to have to be dialed in off the tee. The other thing I'm glad that Bet the Number was looking at were some of these mid irons. So they're looking from 150 to 225. So maybe not even mid irons, but say mid to long irons out there at 225. But this golf course forces you to lay up off the tee. And while guys like maybe Bryson, even a John Rahm probably aren't laying up as much off the tee, to avoid a lot of those pot bunkers, you're not leaving yourself 100 yards in, right? A lot of the shorter tracks in America, PGA Tour Birdie Fest, like what we have at the John Deere Valero, for example, they're short and you can hit driver. I mean, at the worst, you're hitting 3-wood at those kind of golf courses. Here, there's going to be a whole lot of irons that you hit off the tee, especially if you want to avoid the stuff that's off the tee. And I think where this 150 to 225 range comes even more in play are guys that we know are going to lay up. So Bryson, I think that he's going to have to be more conservative this week. If he hits the driver everywhere, he's likely missing the cut. He's just going to hit it in the gorse too much. And, you know, I love Bryson. I love the fact that he's coming in off a US Open win, but he just can't afford to hit that driver. What I want to see from Bryson, right, if he has to lay up, and I think that the guys that spray it, you're going to have to lay up this week a lot more than you'd like. You better be good with the mid to long irons. And fortunately for Bryson, well, he can do so. So I don't think he's completely out of play at this kind of golf course, but definitely better setups for him. Like what we had, I think Valhalla was probably the best fit for him. So kind of a surprise that he didn't win there. But yeah, Pinehurst, I mean, if he can get it done there, he's certainly at least in play at this kind of golf course. And you can see he's number 1 in the Bet the Number model. So don't let that talk you off him too much. If we scroll down a little bit, Terrell Hatton showing up again. Again, he's got a top 5 finish at this course, so I think that is especially interesting. Joaquin Niemann's been a really good mid to long iron player. Benny Yan, Shane Lowry, former Open champion himself, also relatively accurate off the tee. A few guys to maybe keep an eye on here. If you're looking at regular shots gained approach off the tee, you're going to want to include that in your modeling. I don't think around the green play is something that you can completely ignore, right? Especially if it's going to be a windy week. Even your best players, if it's going to be real blustery out there, are probably only going to hit like 12, maybe 13 greens in regulation per round. So having a stout short game is going to be extremely important. Just maybe not as important this week because the ball striking, in my opinion, is where a majority of your weight should be, a majority where your emphasis should be, because it's a much harder driving test than what we're used to seeing. In terms of your regular approach play, I know those mid to long irons make a lot of sense, but you might just want to look at some regular old shots gained approach stats. Outside of the stuff that Bet the Number is looking at, I'm also trying to take a look at some Open Championship success, right? So I know they don't have like shots gained Open Championships on here, and normally, right, we have a whole section where we talk about comp courses, but we unfortunately don't see a lot of courses like the Open Championship. You know, I think other Opens are a good example of what we can compare to, albeit not perfect, because they're different tests off the tee. But in terms of American golf that we've seen, Kiowa Island, it's kind of a link style golf course right up there in South Carolina. It's a longer course than what we're going to have this week, but that's really the only comparable course that I can think of. You know, maybe a Congaree has that same kind of look off the tee. It's also kind of long. So, you know, just not a lot of great comp courses to use. So if I was going to do that, if I was going to try and find some shots gained metrics to add on top of just our regular old shots gained metrics that we have in the model here, well, maybe it'd be some course history stuff at Open Championships. So that's what I'll say about the comps. Unfortunately, I don't think enough to have a whole section of the video this week, but if you added that on top of this pretty straightforward model, I think you're going to have a good idea of what to expect this week. A lot of people will add too many factors to their models to go out there and identify top plays. You can see Bet the Number, who works with tour players week in, week out, only has your 4 regular shots gained metrics and then 2 additional stats, right? It's the approach play and then some of the driving stuff that they're looking for. I think that that is a great way to kind of make your life simple rather than having like 9-10 factors that you're looking at. It's great to deep dive golf courses, but sometimes we have that paralysis by analysis and you just try and do too much when you're going out there and making a model. I think you guys, people out there, when you're doing your own stuff, might want to try and take a word of advice from the BTN guys, right? Kind of condense it down, just look at what's actually actionable for any single week. And again, just try and simplify your life a little bit. Alrighty guys, that is all I've got for the course breakdown this week. Hopefully you feel a little bit more prepared for all of your exposure and are ready to go out there and have yourself a week for this major. Before you hop on out of here, go ahead and smash that like button for me and also comment down below what you've got as the winning score for this tournament. If you can go ahead and give me the exact winner, you will win a free month of my Patreon page, which is of course where I'm posting all my fantasy and betting analysis. Over there you can find my spreadsheets for DFS, all the different shots gained metrics, research that I'm using to make my player pool over there, and for the prop side of things, you can check out all the different prop analysis over the years at Royal Troon, as well as all the exposure that I'm taking on in Underdog Fantasy and Prize Picks. To earn that free month, again, just give me your guess for the winning score below, and it'll be a first come, first serve. So once a score is taken, they cannot be taken again. So just go ahead, claim your score down below, and if you end up getting it right, you will win that free month. Appreciate the support here as per usual, guys. Go ahead and smash that like button. I'll see you guys for all the content throughout the rest of the week, including our betting and DFS preview, which will be dropping a little bit later on this afternoon.